So, you want to build a new character, but you don't really understand all the powerful options that you could take. Well, here's 10 starting points that could lead to some really strong builds. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka Thraben you here for another Pathfinder 2E video, and today we're going to talk about powering up your characters. So my goal today is to show you some things that you can do at low levels with limited investment. I don't want to show you Franken builds that require you to be an ancient elf and multiple archetypes and very specific niche things. I want to show you broad things that in one or two choices can power up your characters. So everything that I'm going to do today will be accomplished by level 4. And the reason that I'm choosing that is because at level 2, you can get your free archetype if you are playing in a free archetype game, or otherwise take a dedication. And then at level 4, you could take your first real feat from that dedication. Not everything is going to have to do with archetypes, but a lot of them will. Note here, I'm going to try to move quickly, spending about 2 minutes on each one of the points that I'm going to make, so I am not giving you finished builds and all of the details. I'm going to show you some neat interactions that I've discovered while building my own characters, and give you some cool directions to take characters. If you enjoy what I'm doing today, please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving me a like or a comment. All those sorts of things will support this new channel. I have a primary Magic the Gathering channel, and I would like it to be worth my time, financially speaking, to make Pathfinder content because I really like making it. This game is awesome! So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. First, a quick legal disclosure. I was gifted copies of the NPC Core as well as Rival Academies recently for the purposes of making content. Thank you, Paizo. You're the best. I appreciate it. And so a couple of the things from here are going to be from Rival Academies, including the literal best blaster ever printed. And this is no hyperbole. This is not content creator hype over a new thing. This is my literal opinion as someone who spends hours and hours and hours of my free time thinking about Pathfinder. I believe the new Runelord dedication on the wizard is the most powerful blaster caster ever. And this is counting things like sorcerers with their, potent sorcery, dangerous sorcery, or the psychics with their unleash psyche. So what do you need to make this happen? You need to be a wizard, as this is a class archetype. You can only take the Runelord dedication at level 2 if you are a wizard. And the gist of what you get is a super staff. It is flavored as a polearm or spear, more on that in a second, and you get something called a personal rune. So normally, when you have a staff, it can have up to your max level of spell slots worth of charges. So let's say that you are level 4 and you have second level spells, you can have up to 2 charges in that staff, meaning that you could cast a second level spell, which is neat. So normally a staff gives you 1 more max level spell. But what the Runelord is capable of doing is combining their personal rune and a staff into one sort of uber staff that allows them to cast 2 max level spell slots. So this wizard can normally, depending on what level you're at, have 3 max level spell slots. Then use your Drain Bonded magic item to have a 4th spell slot. Maybe you've got a staff giving you a 5th max level spell slot, and now we need a whole nother hand here. These Runelord dedication wizards that are using that class archetype can have up to 6 max level spell slots and a very, very impressive focus spell. Each one of these follows a different one of the 7 deadly sins. That is the subtracts within the Runelord dedication. And the focus spell that I have on the screen here is for the Wrath subtract. This is a single action or 1d4 damage on a fortitude save, which is either going to be cold damage or fire damage. And the important part here is that if you already dealt damage to that creature earlier this turn, it also takes 1 persistent damage of the gaze's type. And since you have the ability to change this, you can stack up these damage types. So for a simple scary turn versus a boss, you could open up on, say, a Force Barrage. I blanked on the name of the remastered version for a second. You could cast 1 action Force Barrage, 1 action Fire Vengeful Glare, 1 action Cold Vengeful Glare, and get 2 different persistent damage types starting up immediately on a creature. which could be very, very potent on a boss enemy. And this heightens well. It heightens by 1d4 and 1 persistent damage per level. So you are rocking 6 max level spell slots and a very, very strong focus spell that can stack multiple different types of persistent damage. This is very, very powerful. Probably the best blaster caster ever printed, and I considered making an entire video going really deep on this, but I think I'm going to leave that to a wizard savant Pathfinder to do. Now, a caveat, that is a warning here. Please ignore the melee aspect that you get from this subtrack. It gives you martial polearm and spear proficiency. That's a trap. Ignore that. That is largely flavor. You're probably not going to enjoy your wizard if you are trying to swing a polearm and you are getting in the mix. Just enjoy blasting things really hard, really fast, for a long time. What if you would like to be a baby bard instead? Requirements are very loose on this one. All you need to be is an arcane or an occult caster with second level spell slots. There's a new spell called, I believe it's Kgalaserke's Axes. Could not get any confirmation of pronunciation there. Or if you are looking on something like Path Builder, you might see it listed as Keen Axes instead. For a single action, you can give a target a +1 status bonus to attack rolls for the spell's duration. Now, there are plenty of ways to get a +1 status bonus to your attack rolls, but most of those are 2 actions or otherwise require some other degree of commitment. So, for example, you can do a 2-action Bless and give a +1 bonus to everyone who is in your aura, but then maybe you are sustaining that aura to make it bigger, or maybe you're moving and then your ally is no longer in that aura and it can be a little bit awkward. This is just single action, one and done, you're buffed for the rest of combat. This is an incredible single action, and this probably requires no changes to your character in terms of its actual build. This is just a really good way to use a second level spell slot. Now, there are a couple of different caveats here. The biggest one being, right when you hit level 4, this may or may not be the best use of one of your top level spell slots, and that is going to depend a lot on your party composition. So for example, if you have a bard who is always going to be dropping a similar buff already, this is not a good use of your spell slots. But, say that you intend on using 2 of your actions to blast from far away and you really don't want to move closer, this could be a really good way to use your 3rd action. It does have a 2-action version, in which case you can potentially give your target an additional boost in damage. And there are a handful of other spells that are sort of these storytelling type spells that get stronger the more actions you spend on them. Look into them. They're really cool. And again, right when you get this, you might want to use your top level slots for damage, but especially later on as you get more and more spell slots and your lower level slots become less and less important. This could be even something that you throw up on multiple of your party members, or even yourself if you're going to be making a bunch of spell attack rolls. Or maybe you have an archetype of some kind and you're just going to, hey, for 1 action, I'm going to buff myself. I'm a fighter who can cast some spells. We're going to get in there. We're going to crack some skulls. This is very powerful. All right. If you came here to hit really hard, this is the one for you. Consider a Magus dedication. At level 4, you can take the Spellstriker feat, which gives you 1 instance of Spellstrike. In case you're not familiar with it, it's a complicated mechanic, but the gist of it is that for 2 actions, you're going to cast a spell and hit someone at the same time. There will be a little bit of reading to do if you're interested in this idea. The overall result here is that with the archetype, you can do this once per battle. It takes like an hour or something ridiculous like that to recharge, so it's just simply not going to happen more than once per battle, and the things that would normally recharge your Spellstrike if you're a true Magus don't work for the dedication. You can get 1 really good turn of burst damage, likely with the Gouging Claw cantrip, although you might choose other options as well, such as Ignition if you're trying to trigger a fire weakness, for example. We're going to do some super oversimplified math here. Let's say you're chunking in with some big weapon. You're at a D12 weapon, you're level 4, so you probably have the runes that give you a second damage die. So you're hitting for something like 2d12 plus 4. Maybe it's a little more if you've already spent some money on another rune. Maybe it's a little more if you have something like some bonus flat damage from being an Exemplar or a Thaumaturge, but you're somewhere in the ballpark of 17 or so average damage per turn cycle. Well, with a second level spell slot, your Gouging Claw would be dealing 3d6 damage and 3 persistent bleed damage on top of that. Assuming the target can bleed and you get 1 bleed tick off before that enemy dies, you are adding 13.5 damage to your 17 damage, nearly doubling your damage output. So if you aren't using a big, great sword or great axe or some crazy weapon like that, a Spellstrike is probably giving you a turn of double damage output, which having that burst damage is sometimes really important. You could use that at the start of a fight to attempt to take out a small enemy and tilt the action economy in your favor, or maybe you can try to combine it with, some fear effects or a sure strike or something like that to have one big turn to power down that boss. There are other archetypes that you can take that give you a powerful 2-action attack of some kind. So for example, you could take an Exemplar icon, such as the Titan Knuckles. Oh, what's it called? The Titan's Breaker from the Exemplar, or Vicious Swing from a fighter to get a similar effect. The Spellstrike literally can only happen once, and hence its damage output is probably going to be a little bit higher than something like a Vicious Swing or an Exemplar ability, which is reusable. Now, a caveat here. If you are only getting a single use of a Spellstrike, it is probably not worth building your entire character around Spellstriking. So for example, do you have to sure strike it if you're only going to do one of them? You could, and it would be good, but you don't have to. Do you have to go and also get a psychic dedication so that you can imaginary weapon because that's the best thing to do with the Spellstrike and anything other than that is suboptimal? No, I mean, if you did it, it might be cool. It might make the damage go up, which is always nice, but it is certainly not a thing that you have to do. So just be aware, just because you are gaining a class feature, and that class feature is very, very good, that does not mean you have to warp your entire character around a secondary thing that you are picking up. This Spellstrike is very good for giving you that one burst turn that you need, and this is especially good if you don't have a good 2-action thing to do on your turn from your own class. I have a few more things to say about the Magus Thievin. So in doing research for this video, I discovered the Sparkling Targe hybrid study spell, which is Shielding Strike. It is a single action that allows you to make a melee strike and then raise your shield. That's it. Nothing fancy. Toss a focus point. Can't do it very many times. But boy is it good. This absolutely slaps. So at the cost of your free archetype, you could gain this Shielding Strike thing. And if you are a character that has very, very tight action economy, like let's say that you are an Exemplar that is trying to swap back and forth between various icons repeatedly, and you're like, man, I really want to use that shield block reaction, but I don't know how I find the time, this Shielding Strike might be the way that you find that time to get in all of the actions that you are trying to do. And similarly, if you are some class that, say, wants to be able to make a strike and cast an offensive cantrip, like an Electric Arc or something like that, that requires a saving throw so it doesn't get in the way of your map, this could be a powerful way to increase your action economy. Note, though, since this is powerful, it is bounded by focus points, meaning that you are going to need to get some other focus points somewhere else, either by taking more Magus feats as a follow-up. There's a pretty good early Magus focus spell called Force Fang that you could pick up to get another focus point, or you could potentially do something like dip into Psychic, as that will just give you another focus point as well. So this is very powerful action compression. Guild users rise up, but it's not always about the archetype, right? There's other ways that you can optimize your character and find powerful things to do. And some of those are in rare backgrounds. The Time Traveler action can give you a free action stride. And I don't think I need to explain why free actions are good. There's so many times where you're like, oh, I have a 2-action thing and a 1-action thing I want to do, but I have to move and that's going to disrupt my flow. Like, this is full out a, like, 6th level exemplar feat. There's a 6th level exemplar feat called Flow of War that lets you, as a free action, stride or strike. This is half of that at level 1 on a background for free. Very good. And the Genie Blessed background can essentially give you a free action Sure Strike. It's a little different than that. It's an attack roll, saving throw, or skill check. But to do that as a free action is incredibly powerful. Note that these backgrounds are very strong. You're getting something unique from them, but that comes at the cost of maybe not getting a skill feat or some other thing, as is often the case with rare backgrounds. You get something cool, but you do lose something as a result of that. So just keep that in mind when you are looking at rare backgrounds. A lot of times it's very easy to go, oh my gosh, that's so crazy, that's broken. But there is a cost associated with it. Have you ever been playing a melee character, a martial character of some kind? You run up, you try to hit the enemy, you roll a 5, and you're like, oh, I guess that's my turn, I'm done. Consider Investigator's Stratagem. This is going to require the investigator dedication, and you get a really, really neat ability. There is a lot of text here, some of which I have on screen. You get to devise a stratagem, and if the creature that you're going to target with this thing is going to be a part of your investigation, more on that in a second, you're going to get to do this as a free action. So, you roll a d20, you look at the number. If you attack that creature, you use that number. So, if you roll a 1, you're like, okay, I'm not going to attack that creature this turn, and you're going to go and you're going to do something else. Maybe you'll do some skill actions, maybe you'll cast a spell, maybe you'll just go attack someone else. But you can know ahead of time how good your attack is going to be against a certain creature. And this is a fortune effect, meaning that you can't apply another fortune effect to it, such as a hero point, a sure strike, something like that. But to essentially have the ability to know what your roll is ahead of time, and then essentially be able to re-roll your attack by attacking another creature is incredibly powerful. Even more so if you do have some big 2-action, vicious swing, Spellstrike sort of thing that you can do when you know that the attack is going to be good. Now, you only are going to get this as a free action if the creature you're targeting in some capacity could help you in a part of your current investigation, which means there is going to be a little bit of out-of-combat setup. There is a follow-up feat that you could take later on to kind of ignore this and make it so that after using one action on your person of interest, you could keep doing it as a free action to them in the future. Sometimes this could be a little bit annoying. So you make your die roll, you roll a 5, and you go, okay, that's probably not going to hit. Oh, then I'm going to have to use one of my actions to move somewhere else. So keep in mind that it may force your character to do other things, but this is upside, not downside. It's just something you need to be aware of, because instead of walking up, attacking, and missing, you now get to kind of redo your turn with the information about what was coming. There's a lot more text here. This is actually quite complicated. Normally, an investigator can substitute intelligence. You can't do that. There's a bunch more text about a defensive stratagem. So this is something you're going to have to do a little bit of reading if you want to do, but this is very powerful. If you want to go big dammies and you want to make sure your big dammies hit, look into this. The next one is one of my favorites, and it comes online already at level 1. Be a gnome and select the Razzle Dazzle Ancestry feat. Razzle Dazzle is a free action. Can you sense the theme of today's video? What? What's that, lassie? Free actions make your character more powerful? I never would have known. Anyway, Razzle Dazzle, free action. When you blind or dazzle a creature, you can increase the duration of that by 1 round. Now, dazzled is a powerful condition, giving monsters essentially a flat check that they have to do before they can hit you. And dazzled is already very good. And if you make that last longer, holy moly, like, it becomes strong. So for example, I have included an Oracle focus spell down below, Spray of Stars. This is something that you can just have at level 1. You can make On a success, a creature dazzled for 1 round, and then you hit him with the old Razzle Dazzle, and now it's dazzled for 2 rounds, or 4 rounds on a failure. This is very, very strong, increasing a short duration dazzle into a medium to long term duration dazzle. Now, a couple of caveats here. Blinded is really, really, really strong. Like, dazzled is good, blinded is busted. They don't let you just hand out blinded left and right. And so many times things that blind creatures either have the incapacitation tag or have the ability for the creature to like rub their eyes to get rid of oil or smoke or whatever it is that you threw in their eyes. And doing razzle dazzle on things with the incapacitation tag or things where the opponent, the enemy, just has a chance to end it by taking 1 action is maybe not going to be the best. So just kind of make sure you're finding the right thing to razzle dazzle. How would you feel about a +4 to AC? Would you like that? Consider being a Wayang? I'm not exactly sure on the pronunciation there. They are really neat for performance-based characters, so if you are going to do something like a bard or maybe a swashbuckler, I consider looking into them. They have a really neat first-level feat called Dance of the Mouse Deer. So you're going to attempt a performance check against the perception DC of an enemy, or 2 enemies, or 4 enemies, or 8 enemies, depending on your exact proficiency in performance. On a success, you're going to get standard cover, a +2 circumstance bonus. That's like raising a shield. On a crit success, there's a lot of text here, but the gist of it is that you are going to get a +4 circumstance bonus to AC, which is huge. And on a failure, okay, maybe you wasted an action. Not the end of the world. This is like a super raise shield for a performance-based character. And let me tell you, I recently played a bard, and that bard, who was maxed out in performance with items to performance, sometimes multiple different types of bonuses to performance, I was critting on performance checks left and right. So it is not just, oh, you're going to crit every once in a while. It's, no, I might expect to crit regularly. So this is, in many ways, an improved raise shield if you are a performance-based character, and it's one that doesn't require you to have a shield in your hand. So you can have, a staff in one hand, a wand in another, and still just be dancing around doing your thing, getting a very, very respectable bonus to your AC. Now note that this can fail though, so sometimes you will waste an action, and let's consider low-level play where you are just getting one thing because you're not yet an expert in performance. If there's 3 enemies on the field, the Dance of the Mouse Deer might be happening against one of them, and you might get attacked by the wrong enemy, and you might not have that bonus. But once you are at expert proficiency, which is going to happen very, very quickly on your performance-based character, this can be a wild boost to AC. And this Ancestry also has some other cool performance-related things, so check it out if you are into the performance stat. Athletics maneuvers are good. Tripping is good. Oh, but my hands are full. It doesn't matter. So many times you are fishing for weapon traits that have something like trip or reach or disarm or whatever. What if you just have 8 silver pieces? For 8 silver pieces, you can get a shield augmentation, which the important part here is that we can add things like disarm or shove or trip to our shield. And notably, you can choose to have multiple of those with your shield augmentation. So you can get 1 of backswing or forceful, or 2 of disarm, non-lethal, shove, thrown 10 feet, trip, versatile slashing. So if you want to play a sword and board character, but you still want to be able to do some athletics maneuvers to support your party when haha damage goes burr is not the only thing that is important to a fight, a shield augmentation is very, very strong for that. Just as a quick aside, it's not going to come up, right? Because you're not going to crit fail a trip attempt, right? If you do crit fail your trip attempt with this shield augmentation, you do drop your shield, which is not great. But I think the upside of being able to trip without a free hand is really important. And our final one that we're going to do here is a little bit weird. And I wanted to round out this list with something that was not necessarily combat oriented, because I think a lot of times people get caught up in white room math. How do I make the damage go up? How do I make really neat and cool interactions? And they forget that combat is only a portion of Pathfinder. So there are some things that you can do to power up your character that may or may not actually have returns in combat. And one of my favorites of those is actually just the skill feat Multilingual, which you can take as either a general feat or a skill feat, and you can even pick it multiple times. All you do, you learn 2 languages. That's it. It doesn't sound good, but I can tell you in practice, this is very powerful, but in a very different sort of way than a Spellstrike or a Devise Stratagem might be. There are many things in the game that have a linguistic trait of some kind that makes it so that it's only going to work if a creature understands you. Well, if you know 10 languages, then there's a very good chance that you're going to speak whatever it is that that monster speaks, and your thing is actually going to work. Whereas if you're running around with just, Common and Sylvan, that's not going to be the case. And how many times in a Pathfinder Society game have you heard someone go like, okay, does anyone here speak X language? You can read this writing if you know this language. Or, you get the closely guarded dwarf, and all of a sudden, you address him in Dwarvish, and it's like, oh, my brother. And all of a sudden you are treated better. Your relationship with that person kind of instantly levels up. They give you information that you otherwise might not have gotten. Being able to do things like recall knowledge in or out of combat is really good. Having the ability, similarly, to just speak a lot of languages and have access to other parts of the game that you normally might not have access to is very strong. I believe that my necromancer that I am currently playing knows 10 or 11 languages. And when I become a master in society in a couple more levels, I believe I've taken the multilingual feat 2 or 3 times on that character. I'm going to pick up more. Yeah, I pulled up my necromancer. So my necromancer currently knows Aklo, Chthonian, Common, Diabolic, Draconic, Elven, Empyrean, Fey, Jotun, and Necrol. How many of those 10 languages have I used? 9. I've used all of them except Diabolic, which I am going to use in the next session because we're about to walk into a devil casino. Language is power, folks. All right, so I hope some of that was useful to you all in coming up with new ideas to play characters. If you end up using any of this stuff, let me know down in the comments. I always love to hear that. Unless you're telling me that your GM banned your character because you made a genie-blessed investigator archetype magus who is using all of the fortune effects with imaginary weapon to devastating effect. In that case, I don't know you. I've never seen you. Don't talk to me. You didn't hear that from me. Anyway, have a great rest of the day. See ya.